Now, the Liberal Democrats are today setting out plans to provide free personal care to support older or disabled people in England in their own homes, in a move they say will ease pressure on the NHS.
We're joined now by the leader of the Lib Dems, Davey, who's on the sofa. Good morning to you.
Morning.
Thank you for letting us interrupt your water sports. It's good to have you here. What are you offering then in terms of social care? How is what you're proposing going to help people who are watching this morning?
When I became leader of the Lib Dems, I said I wanted the party to be the voice of carers, partly because I've been a carer most of my life. I looked after my mum when she was dying, then my nana, and now my son. And I know how important family care is to the whole of our society. But also, I don't believe you can fix our NHS and rescue our NHS unless you sort out social care and family care. And so what we want to do is to make sure that people can come out of hospital when they're ready to come out, because there'll be a care place at a care home, or there'll be a care package at their home, and they can afford it. And by the way, crucial to our programme is we get more carers. So we're also arguing today that there should be a new national minimum wage for carers, £2 an hour above living wage, to attract more people into carers, so those carers are there to look after our elderly and our disabled people.
I mean, you know this as well as most people, that this is a huge issue and actually one that isn't talked about that much, and perhaps it's not talked about that much during election periods because potentially the money is huge when it comes to this, because not only are the carers we know about, there are also the carers that we don't know about.
So you're absolutely right. I think politicians have ignored and forgotten carers, partly the social care, which sometimes gets debated, those care workers who are so important in care homes and looking after people in their homes, but also family carers. Actually, it's family carers who do the bulk of the caring, looking after their loved ones. And often they're really strained, they're really stressed, and the danger is if we don't support them, they'll not be able to continue the caring, and then that falls on the taxpayer and is incredibly difficult to provide. So what we're saying at this election, what the Liberal Democrats are putting right at the front of our NHS strategy, is this big package on care, making it more affordable for people and making sure we attract people into the system. And I think if we do that, we do take pressure off the hospitals. And then people can be discharged, we can therefore have those beds to deal with the waiting lists. And I think there's a win-win-win there. You mentioned the cost, because it doesn't come cheap, let's be really frank with you.
What do we do? Is it 2.7 billion you're saying? That doesn't seem like it would be enough.
Well, let me take you through the figures. It's 2.7 billion for the free personal care. That includes some of the money that's in the system that's been legislated for. There's also £1 billion extra needed for the minimum wage pledge, so carers get a higher wage. Most of that money, all that money actually, will come from reversing the cut on tax to the big banks. The Conservatives got rid of the bank surcharge, or reduced it, the bank levy. The big banks have had since 2015 about £4.3 billion worth of tax cuts. We think they can afford it. They made £44 billion in profits early this year. And, you know, when things are tough for ordinary people, we don't raise taxes on ordinary people. We think the big banks can afford this, and this will make a massive difference to pay for this care package, which, as I say, I think could be a real game changer for our NHS.
Let's talk about the election in general and out on the road. And most of the time people have seen you, you've had a really big smile on your face, whether you've been falling into some water somewhere or, you know, are you enjoying this? What's it like being a party leader during an election?
Well, I actually enjoy election campaigns anyway. I like engaging with the public. But what I think is important is that politicians, this is my personal belief, politicians take the issues of voters really seriously, whether it's the personal care issue I'm talking about today, whether it's the issues we talked about last week on sewage, on mental health support for our children, on free school meals from children from poorer backgrounds. So we've got over serious messages, but I don't think you have to take yourself too seriously, and you can have a bit of fun in the meantime.
But on a day when the two men who realistically could be Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer, will be acting all presidential behind lecterns and debating head-to-head tonight, is there a risk that you look a bit daft when you're falling off waterboards and stuff?
Do you know, we've had a really positive response from people. They get the messages, they get the fact that, you know, at Lake Windermere it was about sewage, for example. And, you know, you mentioned tonight, I think people are going to switch off. I mean, for example, I think they've heard way too much from Rishi Sunak already.
Shouldn't you be encouraging people to be watching
I'm giving you a
Democrat?
Well, listen, I love the democracy, and I think we should hear from every political persuasion, and thank you very much for having me on your programme. But I think generally people who I'm talking to are fed up of Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives. And when I go across the country, there are so many areas where if you want to beat the Conservative MP, Rishi Sunak's candidate, you vote Liberal Democrat. I've talked about the Blue Wall in the south of England, also in the West Country, in our former strongholds, in Greater Manchester, in the two Stockport seats, Cheadle and Hazel Grove, in places in Yorkshire, in Scotland. A Liberal Democrat vote is the powerful vote if you want to back the candidate who can beat the Conservative, or indeed the SNP.
We don't, of course, know what the result is going to be on the 4th of July, but it's likely to be one of the two main parties. You've talked very powerfully about your own personal investment in care at home because of your personal circumstances. In order to make something like that happen, how do the Liberal Democrats do that? Would you be thinking now about coalitions? Are you thinking about what happens the day after the 4th of July?
I'm actually not. My job as leader of the Liberal Democrats is to get our message over. That's why it's good to come on programmes like this to talk about care. I'm not sure if people have heard how committed the Liberal Democrats are to transforming the experiences of family carers. So that's what election is about. And when I go around the country, I see our candidates. They're really great local champions for their community. They want to represent their community, to campaign for their area on things like the health service, on things like sewage, on their schools and getting better mental health support for children and young people in schools. And so Liberal Democrat candidates are committed to those ideas and those values. And the more Liberal Democrat MPs we have in the next Parliament, I think it'll be a better Parliament.
But realistically, you know you won't be going into number 10 as Prime Minister on the 5th of July. You must have to start thinking about calculations about, OK, if, say, Labour were to be the biggest party but not have enough seats for an overall majority, what would we be prepared to give and take to form some kind of coalition or agreement with them? I mean, you've been in a coalition yourself before. Yeah. You know what happens.
But listen, I take my orders from the voters, and I'm talking to the voters, and my teams across the country are talking to the voters. And they're talking about the health service. They want to know how we're going to improve this. Can the health service be improved? I mean, people are really... they don't believe the government anymore. They've said they're going to do this and that, and they've broken their promises. And they want to see, is there a political party who's got a programme? And I'm going to focus on that. When I became leader of the Liberal Democrats, I said my top job was to defeat as many Conservative MPs as possible. I think this Conservative government is completely out of touch. I think they've taken the British people for granted. I think they've taken their own supporters for granted for far too long. They have got to go, and my job is to make sure that they do go with lots of Liberal Democrat MPs elected.
Sir Davey, thank you very much for what else today got in story? Surfing or?
I don't know. They never tell me beforehand.
Really? You don't know?
I get a few hours' notice, that's all.
And tell me, you fell off the surfboard on purpose,
well,
didn't you?
Do you know, the truth is, I did once. I'll admit to that.
Yeah, I thought you did.
But I tried to get on and I fell off another 4 times.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.